Thank you. Okay, let me look at the next question. So it was a bit difficult for me to establish the context for this question because the person who asked the question didn't actually provide what they do. But the question is, and this is from Winifred Hansberger, is the name. So the question is, working my way through your Pay What You Can ebook and really appreciating it. I am curious about Pay What You Can for online events. I think your online workshops are a flat fee. We've been doing Pay What You Can for short 1 to 2 hour online offerings, and it's great. People pay up front. Would love to do it for longer weekly series, but wonder if people will pay a minimum and drop out, taking up a spot someone else could have used. We limit enrollment. Better to go with a flat fee? Question mark.
Okay, so pay what you can online. I don't do it, so I'm not the best person to speak to it. Mark Silver has a pay from the heart model that he uses. I think if you just Google Mark Silver pay from the heart, there's probably a write-up, a description. He might have also done a course or a training on it. It's possible, but he knows more about it than I do. Yes, there is that risk, certainly, of right, you set a minimum and then they join, but because they don't have a ton of skin in the game and because they're not all in the same room, where there's some level of accountability and peer pressure, they can't just, if you're in a live room, you can't turn off your Zoom camera and mic and do whatever you want. And if you, anyways, there's less accountability online. So yes, I think the risk of them just paying a small amount as the deposit upfront and then bailing is much higher. So a couple thoughts about that. One, talk with somebody like Mark, learn from him how he does it. Two, if you're going to do that, I think you just need to factor in the fact that there's going to be more dropouts. That just has to be a part of the model. So then you're not heartbroken and disappointed. For example, I know that for my live workshops, there's about a 10% no-show rate. Yeah, in bigger towns, I've noticed that number can be a bit higher. In London, there's a lot of flakiness in London. So there were just more no-shows. But if you factor that in, then you can oversell the event. So I had a 70-person venue, but I definitely sold at least 77 tickets because I just know they're not all going to show up. And if I oversell it based on what I know, 99% chance we're not actually going to have everyone there. And then I don't have to resent it. I don't have to be bitter that, oh my God, these people bailed and I could have sold the spot. Sell the spot. Yeah. Once you know what those ratios are. So if you know for sure there's going to be a bunch of people that start but they don't finish, and they're only going to pay the minimum, just get more people. Don't keep marketing until you're convinced you're going to hit your goal. Because one of the things you'll find the first time you do pay what you can is well, you'll start to figure out what the average is, what people pay on average. So let's say you do this longer group program on average, you get $100 to keep the numbers simple. Okay, then, well, how much do you want to make in this? And you say, I want to make $4,000 for this. Great, that's 40 people. So you need to have 40 people in. But then you may need to factor in the fact that not everyone who signs up shows up. So you need to know that ratio, that number. And also, yeah, maybe some of them aren't actually going to pay 100. There's going to be a percentage that pay the minimum. But at least if you know the average overall, then you just factor that in. It's like, how many people do we need? What's the math? But you got to start with the goal. And I think this is part of the challenge with events is, I mean, there's a kind of, I do events all the time where it's like, I'm going to be in this town. I'm just going to do whoever shows up. That's great. And then I'm not bitter. However much money I make, 12 people showed up. Great. I'm making money. But if this is really core to your business model and your profitability, then you're going to want to sit down and think, okay, how much money as a minimum do I want to make here? What's my goal? What's my aim at this event? And then you design the strategy to hit that number. And the way that you do that with Pay What You Can is your averages, which can just take a little bit of time. Also, Danny Inney, he did a Pay What You Can offer, mirasee.com, mirasee.com. he did a pay what you can offer for a fairly robust something, and he was inspired by me. If you just search Danny Any pay what you can, maybe on YouTube, I think he and I may have had a conversation about it. He may have released something about it, but he's also somebody who's learned a bit about how to do this. You're going to make less money than you would if you charge a flat fee, but you'll get more people. So the front end is lower, but the back end is often higher with pay what you can. The key, again, don't resent it. Set yourself up so you won't be embittered by people not paying you the full amount or what you think you deserve. We got to just drop the whole deserving thing and come to it from a different place.
I I actually do have a follow-up question just
Yeah.
based on a conversation I've had with somebody else recently, based on the pay what you can offer. And I will tag her in if she gives me permission, by the way. So she asked me to ask you, do people always pay more than you would have marked? So if, say, for example, you mark a price and then there's the pay what you can, but on average, do you get more than perhaps a marked price, or is it
I
less?
so for example, my day-long workshops, I charge, I'd say if you want to pay a flat fee, and that's a key distinction with pay what you can, it's letting them know here's what the flat fee would be if you just want to pay that. Because some people are very uncomfortable with pay what you can. That they feel unnerved by not knowing what to pay. And if you don't give them any ballpark, that can be so stressful. They just, I don't want to do this. And they won't come, they won't sign up. So for some people, they just prefer a flat fee. So I say, if you want to do that, it's $200. Um, which I may increase in the coming year, but let's say $200. But I know on average I get $100 per person. So it's half of what I would get if I made a flat fee. But a question I've asked pretty much every live workshop I've done over the last few years, as I say, raise your hand if you would have come to this, like honestly, you won't hurt my feelings. Raise your hand if you would have come, if the only way to come was to pay $200 flat fee. And the most number of hands I've seen go up is a third of the hands. And it's usually closer to, you know, 10 to 20% of the hands. So I'm getting 4 to 5 times more people coming to the workshop. I've had it all be, 10 times the number of people came. They just wouldn't have come if it had been the flat fee. And my guess is some of them, when they arrived, weren't thinking necessarily about paying 100. I've had people pay more. I've had people pay 300 for the day, but on average, it's about 100. So I don't expect it to be more. I mean, I expect it to be half or so, or less. If it's online, it'll just be less. If you spread it out over time, it's going to be less. The reason Pay What You Can work so well in a day-long workshop, one, it's in person. We're live in the room. There's a certain amount of just accountability that's there that's not online. Two, it's done at the end of the day. So they get to do the whole journey. Unless they leave early, they're there for the whole time. And they get to hear me do the whole pay what you can spiel. So that kind of I get to really close the ceremony and create that moment for the giving. Whereas online, maybe they're on that call, maybe they're not. It's so easy for it to get lost in their email inbox and, oh, I should send more money, and oh, money's tight, I'll do it next month. And they just never do. So that's what I would say about that.
Thank you.